All right, let's get started. Hi, everyone. Welcome. I am Julia Rose Polk, and we're going to get started. Welcome to the Masterclass, the top 10 truths every teacher needs to know about trauma. This is a crash course to help you start trauma-proofing your teaching. And I am your host and guide from the side, Julia Rose McDermott Polk, and I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist, trauma trainer, trauma therapist, and I'm so glad to be joining you today. My mission, why I'm here with you today and what you're doing here is to ensure that every child has a trauma-informed teacher. And that is for one very, very important reason, because the best thing you can ever give a traumatized child is a regulated adult who is trauma literate. I'm going to say that again. The best thing ever that you can give a traumatized child is a regulated adult who is trauma literate. So that's what we're doing here today. And I'm going to help you move away from the arduous and sometimes depleting cycle of confusion, overwhelm, and reactivity that comes from not understanding trauma in children or how to navigate it, to growing your trauma literacy and empowering you with tools for regulation, safety, and relationship building in your classroom. And just for showing up live, you will get a certificate of attendance. I have all this tech stuff on the back end that allows me to see who attended and who didn't. So all of you who are staying with us for the duration of the masterclass will get this certificate of attendance. And I'm so glad to treat you to that, because I know so many of you are looking to collect your professional development hours. And also, for those of you who stay till the end, there's a little special opportunity I want to sneak your way. And we'll talk more about that as we get closer to it. For any of you who are into the social, please feel free to tag me on Instagram, Trauma Camp for Teachers. Let others know that you're here, that you're taking in this information, and I'll definitely reshare that if you do. Just to give you a glimpse of my story, so you know who's in front of you, who's walking you through this journey today. I used to be one of those traumatized students in your classrooms. I grew up in a family with a lot of dysfunction, a lot of untreated mental health issues, addiction, and most importantly, two parents who had untreated trauma of their own. Then when I entered my middle adolescence and into my early 20s, I started receiving trauma therapy and was able to go to trauma treatment. And it was actually there that I decided that I needed to be a therapist too. I needed to alchemize what I'd been through and be able to share it with others who were going on their trauma healing journeys as well. I started specializing in childhood trauma. I became an infant parent mental health specialist, and I started training with some of the experts in the world. You can see Dr. Bruce Perry here. He wrote a book with Oprah. He's one of the leading child psychiatrists in the world. And I trained under him. I learned from the Meadows, one of the premier trauma treatment centers in the world. And despite all this excellent knowledge and excellent training I went through, it's actually the marriage of both my lived experience healing from my own trauma and my professional expertise that is what I carry into this work that I do today. It's really valuable as a person who's been on both sides of the couch, as we say, to be able to lead others in this journey. And so that's who I am. That's how I'm showing up here today. And I'm so, so deeply glad to have you all with me. And I want to say too, there's a thing called post-traumatic growth and post-traumatic liberation. And those two things are as much a part, as important to hold in this work of trauma healing as the trauma itself. So what I do today is I teach professional educators, school staff, and administrators how to use relationships to build trauma-informed teaching practices, classrooms, and school environments. The professional journey I've been on has included over 10 years practicing in the field, developing 4 core trainings, educating over 3,000 educators around the world, and reaching over 27,000 through my webinars and podcasts. So you are now part of this community. You are now part of this learning movement, and we're on this journey together. And as we start, I want to invite you to turn off all your distractions. It is so easy to have our attention pulled away in this day and age. And all of us have a phone, we know it. But if I can invite you to really just tune that out, close down the tabs, put down the iPad, and just be here with me, right? Because the more present you can be for yourself, the more you can actually receive what is being offered here today. So I have some questions for you, and this is just checking in as we get started. Do you, as an educator or someone working in the school system, feel like you are constantly managing or reacting to behaviors instead of actually teaching? If that is a yes for you, please put it in the chat. Are you exhausted, emotionally drained, and compassion fatigued from constantly giving without seeing real change? If that is you, give me a yes in the chat. Then there are those of you who might be tired of relying on discipline strategies that don't seem to work and might even be making things worse. If that's you, please put a yes in the chat. And my final question to you, I see so many yeses, is do you wish you had the confidence and tools to create a classroom where you knew that every student felt safe, seen, and ready to learn? If that is you, give me a yes, because you are absolutely in the right place. Now, I want to talk about why some of you are showing up, right? Some of you came because you're trauma curious. You've heard this, or trauma informed curious. You've heard this buzz term, trauma informed, of the last 5, maybe 10 years. And you're like, what does that actually mean? I understand trauma, but what does that mean? And that might be why you're here. Some of you are motivated to just excel in your teaching, to just bring the highest caliber educational tools you can to your classroom and your work with children. And then some of you are coming because you're overwhelmed and frustrated and still committed to doing the best work you can and to being the best teacher you can for your students. If that is you, I want to say welcome. And I want to ask, which one are you? Where do you find yourself? Are you the curious teacher about trauma-informed education? Are you motivated to utilize more effective approaches? Are you overwhelmed and frustrated, but committed to finding a better way? Okay, every time I do this webinar, it's the 2s that went out and the 3s are a very close second. So we are in good company here. I'm really understanding that very few people are the trauma-informed curious, because everyone's a little bit familiar with that term. So we're in good company. Whatever your motivation, I want you to know that I support you. Whatever brought you here, whatever allowed you to click yes, sign me up, register, I support you being here. It doesn't matter if you've been doing this a little while or a long time. My encouragement and my honor is being here with you, because I believe that trauma-informed teaching is the highest standard in education. And I want to say that again, right? I believe that trauma-informed teaching is the highest standard in education. And we're going to go on a bit of a journey today, right? So we're going to start with 3 core trauma-informed care principles. We're then going to move to why teachers, why out of all the professionals I could be training, why focusing on teachers? And then we're going to talk about some important things that get in the way. And then we'll dive into those top 10 truths, followed by, for those of you who are interested, how to work with me, and a live Q&A at the end. So that's the journey we're going on together. Let's start with the principles. Principle number 1, it is never too late to refocus your efforts towards becoming a more effective teacher for your student. So whether you've been doing this for 2 months or 2 years or 20 years, or you're about to retire, it does not matter where you are starting from. It just matters that you are starting, right? There's a Chinese proverb that says, the best time to build an oak, if you're stranded in the desert, the best time to plant an oak tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is today, right? So wherever we're coming from, today is the best time to be taking in this work. Because today you can start understanding trauma, implementing highly effective relationship-based approaches with your students, and start seeing major changes in the way you teach and in the environment of your classroom. Principle number 2, I messed up the words there, but being trauma informed means understanding neurobiology, the impact of stress on the human system, and how to use your relationship to create safety. So this is really important. I want you to underscore this. I'm going to say it again. Being trauma informed means understanding neurobiology, the impact of stress on the human system, and how to use your relationship to create safety around that human system. And once you start to see through these lenses, it changes the way you see everything. It's kind of like if you get a red car and you start seeing the red car everywhere. Once you see how trauma affects people's behaviors, minds, bodies, the actions or attitudes, you actually start to see how everyone around you has adapted and how they are organizing their system to create their own safety in the world. Principle number 3, becoming a trauma-informed teacher requires both professional and personal development. This is really important, right? This isn't a STEAM training where you can just kind of receive the information and go on about your way. This requires a degree of reflection. And I don't know a single adult who has taken any of my trainings or gone through any trauma training and not started to reflect on their own lived experience or the lived experiences of those they love with a new lens. So I name this because it's important to acknowledge up front, and I really want to welcome it. I don't want you to run away from it. I really want to embrace it and create a container where that is okay and it is welcome. This is one of my favorite quotes. The longest journey you will ever take is the 18 inches from your head to your heart. And that's all about what trauma-informed care is, right? Reconnecting with our heart, but also being able to use the heart and the head to join together to work with both compassion and empathy, but also strategy and understanding and tools to work with our traumatized children. So let's get into why teachers. And the big core concept of this is the idea of prevention versus treatment. So as I was working in treatment centers, leading trauma treatment programs, working in adolescent treatment centers, one of the things that I saw is that I was treating in late adolescence or adulthood what actually was rooted in early childhood trauma. And so kind of like I didn't want to keep dealing with what was downstream and I wanted to move upstream. That's what the difference is between treatment and prevention. And by and large, prevention is a better investment in time, money, resources, energy, and impact, right? If we can start dealing with what is happening at the top of that river, instead of just continuing to put our resources into what's happening at the bottom, then what happens at the bottom of the river begins to change. Also, I chose teachers because of access, right? The reality is that most people, especially children who need trauma treatment or therapy, will never make it onto a therapist's couch. And that has a lot to do with systemic issues, accessibility issues, cultural reasons that prevent people from wanting to seek out certain types of care from certain types of people, right? All of these are legitimate and they are encroaching on people's ability to receive the support they need. So if we can't get people onto a therapist's couch, where then can we start to reach them and give them doses of trauma-informed care? Not to mention that even if we did get children onto a therapist's couch, if a kid comes to see me, and I see a lot of kids in my work, I get 60 minutes a week with them. Whereas a teacher gets 1,800 minutes per week with their students, right? That is 30 times the therapeutic opportunities that teachers have over therapists. So there is much more of a robust landscape for small and sometimes more significant therapeutic interventions. Now, when I say this, I typically get a concern that pops up that is, but Julia, I'm not a therapist, right? And I promise you, you do not have to be a therapist. Dr. Christy Brandt says this beautifully. She says, you do not have to be a therapist to be therapeutic. And that's really important because I know a lot of teachers that when we talk about trauma-informed care, there can be this kind of instant concern or fear that crops up, that we are asking them to hold emotional space and help people walk through their trauma. And that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about little doses of healing, therapeutic potential, and these reparative experiences that are not necessarily the act or practice of therapy. And the last reason I chose educators to work with is that whether you were trained in this or not, whether you know it or not, you are often one of the first people a child makes contact with after a traumatic event, whether that traumatic event happened over the weekend or the night before or that morning. You are one of the first responders to the traumatized child's lived experience. And so this is really important that as a first responder, you get the adequate training you need to be able to be competent and feel competent and capable in your ability to respond. Dr. Bruce Perry says, and this is kind of reinforcing why teachers, that what helps traumatized children heal more than anything else is anything that increases the number and quality of relationships in a child's life, right? So here together, we're increasing the number and quality of relationships in a child's life, because as a provider who's becoming trauma literate, that instantly reinforces a new and deeper quality into your work with your students. And what I have found hands down is that more than any other profession, teachers benefit the most from trauma-informed care. And this is because educators as professionals have the highest ongoing contact with students. And so this being the population you're serving, trauma-informed care actually empowers you to serve and work with and engage with these students better. Here, we want to look at some of the things that get in the way. And these are teachers' competing priorities, right? And all of these, I'm sure, are very familiar to all of you. Standards and curriculum, I didn't put it, but teaching to the test, lesson planning, managing behavior, managing the classroom, time demands and constraints, your own burnout, exhaustion, compassion fatigue, trauma, workplace challenges, and not to mention your own personal stressors, right? And so with a load this big that teachers are carrying with them all the time, sometimes what I encounter when working with teachers is this very protective response that comes up that says, nothing more. I can't take on any more stress. I can't take on any more responsibility or burden. And that really needs to be honored, right? Because this is a heavy load that educators are carrying. And with that protective shield that comes up, one of the things that can happen is it makes it difficult to receive the information that actually trauma-informed care is not adding more to your plate. It's kind of like lubricant. It's actually assisting you in doing all of these things more effectively. It's actually there to aid you in your work. Again, a common concern, please don't add anything to my list. And here's some truth medicine, that providing and prioritizing psychological safety actually helps you do the work you're already doing. So that's what trauma-informed care is in terms of a benefit to educators. And this is a way I like to look at it, right? If you and your students go on this journey, and we're going to use the metaphor of a road trip every year. We go from one point and we want to get to the other point, right? You can, get your car washed. You can get this engine souped up. You can get the oil changed. You can get the brakes updated. You can pack perfectly and get all the snacks and all the in-car activities ready. But if you haven't put gas in the tank, you're not going anywhere, right? And trauma-informed care, building psychological safety with your students, is the gas in the tank, right? Creating relational safety helps you get to where you need to go. Because here is a really important truth and idea that I need you to take in, that no incredible lesson plan, behavior modification strategy, or future incentive can take the place of a safe, nurturing, and consistent relationship with your students. So let's get into these top 10 truths. Truth number 1, It is likely that every teacher will teach traumatized children. So, and this is just in the United States. I know some of you are joining us from elsewhere, but we're just going to give a snapshot of the US, that approximately 70% of adults and nearly 40% of children have experienced at least one traumatic event in their lives. And just for reference, that's about 178 million adults and 33 million children. And so if you are standing at the front of a classroom, you need to be prepared to be working with traumatized children, whether you are in an affluent or privileged or rural or metropolitan or urban, whatever classroom you are at the head of, you need to be prepared to be working with traumatized children. I remember working with a kind of middle class school district in California, and pretty early on, one of the administrators said to me, "Oh, we don't have trauma at our school," right? And instantly I was aware that she doesn't actually know what trauma is, right? Because things like divorce and mental illness and addiction and loss, death, natural disasters, difficult medical procedures. These are across the board, regardless of your demographic or population, right? So this is really important. It is estimated that every teacher will be working with a traumatized student. And so you'll see me have these little nature photos throughout this, and that is just as we're talking about trauma, and I know I'm moving through this a little rapidly, I want you to take these breathing breaks and give you a reminder to breathe, and also the brain responds to image. So these nature images will help you regulate a little bit, give you a dose of regulation. Truth number 2, all children are vulnerable to and at risk of experiencing trauma. We use terms like at-risk youth, at-risk populations a lot, and that is describing more systemic, more collective aspects that make a group or demographics of people more vulnerable to things like trauma. And those are legitimate, right? But the reason I point out that all children are vulnerable to and at risk of experiencing trauma is actually neurodevelopmental. And this is for the simple fact that children have undeveloped brains, right? The brain of a 2-year-old is much smaller, much more undeveloped than the brain of a 6-year-old, than the brain of a 12-year-old, than the brain of an 18-year-old, right? And the 18-year-old versus a 30-year-old. So all children, simply because of their developmental stages, are more vulnerable to experiencing something as traumatic as opposed to an adult who has a fully formed brain, who has defensive capacities, who has boundaries, who has awareness and lived experience. So all children are vulnerable to and at risk of experiencing trauma. And this, we're going to dive into what trauma actually is, like what the experience actually is a little deeper. And trauma happens when a person's natural ability to cope or regulate has been overwhelmed. I'm going to repeat that. Trauma happens when a person's natural ability to cope or regulate with a threat has been overwhelmed, leaving them unable to adequately fight that threat or flee that threat, right? Trauma also happens when a child experiences high levels or doses of stress or chaos on an intermittent or consistent basis. Take a breath with me. See the wind blowing through the reeds. Okay. Truth number 3, trauma is in the body, not in the event. And the way I like to talk about this is, if there's a car accident, right? 2 cars driving, they get into an accident, and there's smoke, there might be a little fire, there's the crash, the sound, right? And the 2 drivers get out of the cars and they walk away. The trauma has not stayed there at the accident. Those 2 people walking away are walking away with trauma in their bodies, right? Anyone who's been in an accident understands this, right? So you one day might have felt totally safe on the road, safe in the car, safe in the passenger seat. And shortly after an accident, you might find yourself holding that handle above, or, sucking in your breath as someone taps the brakes, right? All of that is a memory, the residue of that traumatic event that has still remained in the body and has not been processed out. And so this is really important, especially because oftentimes people think, well, that happened 5 years ago. That happened when I was just 3 years old. Why am I still affected by it? Why am I not over it? And that's because it's affected your neurobiology. It's affected that child's neurobiology. It's not an event that is past. And so that's truth number 3. This might be my favorite little nature photo because this looks like my old dog, my baby girl, Sugar Wolf, Benny. So she's a cute little nugget. Take a breath and we'll move on. Truth number 4, trauma is not experienced in the same way for all children. So any of you who have experienced any kind of familial or collective trauma, this may speak to you. You may understand this intuitively, right? This thing happened and each of us had wildly different perceptions or memories of what happened. And that is due to 4 important factors: the nature, the timing, the pattern, and the intensity of the event. So the nature of event, and I'm going to use an example of, again, we're going to go with the car accident, right? So was this a kind of benign event? Like I was driving and my car started to hydroplane and we went into an oncoming car and there was a big crash. It was scary and it was traumatic, but it was fairly benign. And I use benign in the terms of lacking any kind of relational threat as an additive to that experience. Whereas, let's say the car accident happened because mom was drunk driving. And so I could smell it on her breath. I could see her swerving back and forth. And I felt not only terrified about my safety in the car, but terrified that my caregiver wasn't protecting me, right? The nature of the event has vastly different, leaves vastly different imprints and has a different quality in terms of how that trauma might be experienced. The timing, right? There's a big difference between someone who's experienced a car accident at 2 months old versus 2 years old versus 12 years old versus 21, right? The earlier you are in your development when you experience overwhelming stress or traumatic stress, the more it actually affects the architectural development of the brain. And so one of the things that can happen the earlier you are in life is these traumas can have a more globalized effect, right? Whereas let's say a 12-year-old who experiences this car accident, they had a pretty safe upbringing. They felt reliable. They felt safe in their community. They felt safe at home. And then this happened. Well, again, that car accident might have been scary and threatening and might be traumatic, but the degree would be very different because they can return to a baseline of safety in their lives afterwards, right? So the timing of this event really does can either escalate or mitigate the effects of trauma. Also the pattern, right? Is this a predictable encounter or is this an unpredictable encounter, right? If I have, now we're going to switch examples. If I have an alcoholic parent who comes home and every night he comes home and gets a 6-pack and sits in his lazy boy recliner and watches TV, and he's still absorbed in an addictive pattern, right? And so there might be trauma and stress and grief and loss from that kind of neglect to that child. But by and large, it's a predictable process that the child understands and knows and can orient their way around in their life, right? As opposed to, let's say that same alcoholic parent comes home and is violent with his spouse and sometimes violent towards the children. And those children don't know when it's going to happen, if dad's in a good mood, or mom's in a bad mood or whatever it is. And so what that requires in terms of that unpredictability is it requires that not only do they have to be vigilant about watching and scanning for threat, but they have to be hyper vigilant, making sure that their focus is on scanning for threat all the time, right? And this is where the term hypervigilance comes from. There's also the quality of intensity, right? Again, if we want to go back to the car accident example, was this a fender bender or was this a 10-car pileup where, you know, I was hanging upside down for 3 hours before help could get to me, right? The level of intensity in terms of how sensorily overwhelming it was to the child will deeply affect how that child experiences the trauma. So these are really important. And again, it's not for you to take out your investigative, you know, spectacle or whatever, magnifying glass, and try to, you know, get into the nitty gritty. But it's important for you to understand conceptually that, you know, if you have students going through a divorce, or if you had students going through a scary medical procedure, all of these factors might contribute to why they might be presenting differently than how you might have originally expected. Okay. Take a deep breath. Notice these beautiful rays falling through the leaves of the trees, creating this beautiful, beautiful image. And the question to ask, just tacking on to the truth we just talked about, was, regardless of what has happened, perhaps the most important question to ask is, was there any loving and caring adult who was there and able to protect, buffer, or at least soothe the child after the stressful or traumatic event? Having a safe adult there may not erase the impact of trauma on a child's life, right? They may still have traumatic symptoms after a scary or threatening event, but it, without question, mitigates the impact of the trauma and creates a pathway for that child to resolve and heal through that trauma more quickly and more smoothly. So here's a beautiful relationship for us to look at, these two wolves. Truth number 5, children are not inherently resilient. Who, I'd love to hear, put a yes in the chat if you grew up hearing this myth, that children are inherently resilient. I certainly did. The truth is that children are malleable. And this is because there are 2 different kind of categories of stressors that children can experience that either make them resilient or make them vulnerable. And here are those types of stress. So the stress that is required to build resilience is predictable, moderate, and controlled. Predictable, meaning I see it coming. I know it's, you know, it's over there. We're walking toward it. I might have some anticipation, but I am not surprised by it. I'm not blindsided. Moderate is, it's not extreme. It's not too extreme. It doesn't completely overwhelm my nervous system. And it's also not no stress, right? So it's a degree of stress, but it's not nothing, right? And then controlled means that it has a beginning, middle, and end, right? There is a control to how long I'll be experiencing that stress, okay? And so that kind of cadence of stress in a child's life really builds resilience and this, so for some kids, it's fearlessness. For some, it's feeling safe enough to be a risk taker or to challenge themselves or be challenged, right? All of this creates this, this openness to experiencing this kind of stress. The kind of stress that creates vulnerability is unpredictable, severe, and prolonged. Unpredictable meaning I didn't see it coming. It caught me from out of left field. I felt blindsided by it, right? And this often happens with children, right? Just for the fact of they don't know life itself yet. But especially when there is chaos, when there is dysfunction, when there are big communal or familial reactions happening, there's a degree of unpredictability. When that stress is severe, right? Again, when it overwhelms my nervous system's ability to cope with or process or regulate, that is too severe, that is too intense of a kind of stress. And then prolonged. There isn't a beginning, middle, and end. With prolonged stress, it is ongoing or it is intermittent. So it happens sometimes, and there's no conclusion, right? This happens with addiction. This happens with untreated mental illness. This happens with long drawn out divorces or familial ruptures, right? The prolonged kind of stress means that there's no endpoint at which I can start recovering. I'm just kind of ongoingly in it. I'm just looking and I see Helen, she may not be able to monitor the chat because she's sharing the slides. I'm not monitoring the chat and I probably won't until at the very end. So, but I will be responding to them afterwards. Stay tuned. Truth. Okay, we didn't have a little nature slide, but we'll have one soon. Truth number 6 is that trauma is often misdiagnosed as ADHD and ASD. So let's get into how. Both of these diagnoses have very specific presentations. And what Dr. Perry calls trauma the great imposter of these presentations, because trauma also shows up in these ways. So let's look at ADHD for a second. First of all, that is a hyper arousal, meaning it is gearing the nervous system up to fight or flee the threat, right? So it's an activating neurobiological experience. And what that can produce in a child is behavior that is unfocused, distractible, jittery, fidgety, aggressive, evasive sometimes. It's more common in male-born children. And this is really important because there's a lot of, I'm not at all saying that ADHD is not real. I know plenty of children and plenty of adults, myself included, who have the diagnosis of ADHD, right? What I am saying is that it is really important to know that we don't always know necessarily that that is an organic diagnosis, and whether or not it is, you are dealing with a nervous system that is still requiring regulation and respectful support, right? And so that kind of origin story of where that behavior is coming from or where that presentation is coming from can be an important factor and consideration. Let's now look at autism spectrum. And this is a hypoarousal, meaning it's causing the nervous system to shut down. Rather than mobilize, it's causing it to shut down. And this goes into freeze mode, right? And this typically happens when a threat is perceived to be too overwhelming and too overwhelming, too painful, or I'm unable to escape it. And so as an escape, my body will shut down instead. What this can look like is slowed or non-responsive movement or behavior, right? I remember working with a very young kid at a therapeutic preschool. He was probably about 20 months old, and he would toddle in with his dad, and I'd see them walking up to the school, and the school itself was very loud, very chaotic, right? There wasn't a lot of trauma-informed principles at play in that environment. And so when he opened the door and was hit with the overwhelm of all that stimulation, he would go from toddling and his face would go kind of slack and his eyes would kind of start to glaze and he would start moving very slowly, almost as if underwater, right? All of that slowed movement was telling me that his body was going into a state of shutdown, right? And so what I needed to do was tailor how I responded to him to be able to like slowly pull him out of that, right? So instead, I'm a big boisterous. I'm like, hey girl, hey, right? That's the kind of energy I bring. But with this kid, I had to get down really low and use a softer voice, kind of like you're waking someone up from a nap, right? And that would slowly help him make eye contact and focus and listen to my voice. And I'd help him take a deep breath and then grab his hand, right? All of these are small little interventions based on what behavior was presenting in front of me at that moment. So slowed, non-responsive movement or behavior, inattentive, shy, avoidant, and this is kind of a cornerstone of how a lot of people have come to understand ASD, which is repetitive patterned behavior. And this is really important, right? The inattentiveness, the shy, the avoidance, all of that, if you are a child who has come to understand that there's kind of threat everywhere, the natural response to that is to kind of like turn inward and create a world of safety, right? And what's also important is the patterned, repetitive, rhythmic activity is the thing that regulates the lower parts of our brain, right? And so whether this is a child with an organic autism spectrum disorder diagnosis, or whether this is a child who has trauma, it's important to know that that patterned, repetitive, rhythmic activity is a way of regulating the nervous system, right? And these types of trauma presentations are more common in female-born children and young children. And there's a lot of ideas around why that is for the male-born versus the female-born. A lot of it has to do with conditioning. A lot of it has to do with size, right? The world's a lot scarier if you're a couple inches shorter than others, right? It's a lot scarier if you're less strong, physically strong than others. And so there's a lot of factors as to why these prevent differently in children, but it's also not to say that boys can't experience hypoarousal and that anyone presenting as a female can't experience hyperarousal. And this is, I only bring up this truth to inject a degree of humility around what we know and curiosity around what we don't know. And Dr. Perry says, if what there is to know about the brain is 1,000 miles long, we only know 2 inches, right? And the 2 inches that we have can actually help a lot of people the more they know about those 2 inches, but we're still all learning. And that kind of collective professional humility is really important in this work. Breathing break. Let's look at this gorgeous sky and these beautiful mountains. They're almost velvety, aren't they? Yeah. Truth number 7, children, especially traumatized children, need to move. And I can get on a soapbox about this. I'm going to try not to. But the current conditions of schooling are really not conducive, not only to the developmentally appropriate nervous system, but also especially for the traumatized nervous system. And what that means is that humans aren't meant to be sitting like in a box all day. And so, and especially a traumatized child whose body is needing to regulate over and over and over, they may need to shake. They may need to rock. They may need to shake their legs or kick against something on their chair. They may need to tap their pencil, or they may need to be, air drumming throughout the day. Whatever it is, I want to invite you to see and understand that behavior as a child's system trying to regulate, right? And especially if you can start to integrate movement into the classroom. And that may still be at the chair, right? That may be one of those rubber bands around the feet of the chair that they can kick against. That might be a rocking chair in the classroom. That might be, yes, you can sit in your seat and you can rock, or stand in the back of the classroom so you can sway side to side. All of that is inviting movement into the classroom that's actually going to help them learn better from you, because when that lower part of the brain is regulated, it increases access to the higher parts of the brain. which is where learning happens, by the way. This is my colleague and friend, Julia Bantimba, and she is also a trauma-informed care provider. We went through the Bruce Perry training together. And she says the things children do might be annoying, but it's not meant to annoy you. And that's where this trauma-informed lensing is really helpful, right? I can easily get annoyed by a kid tapping their pencil or rocking, or it can just activate a part of me that isn't necessarily the most trauma-informed myself. But really understanding that they're not waking up to annoy us. They're not, that's not their mission for the day. All these human bodies are trying to do is settle. Okay. So look at these beautiful green leaves with the sun shining through. Okay, truth number 8. I'm going to consolidate this a little bit so we can move forward. Healing requires expression, regulation, choice, and respect. Expression, crying, tears, a yell. And all of these children need support in doing in moderation, but they need support in doing them, right? Regulation, movement, pattern, repetitive, rhythmic activity, choice. One of the things that happens especially when people experience a trauma, but especially when people experience any kind of interpersonal trauma, is the loss of choice and agency. And so finding ways to restore choice and agency into your relationship with that student is going to, it's an indescribable investment of safety into that relationship. And so the example I like to give here is if I see a kid sitting on a bench on the playground crying, right? My impulse might be to go over and simply put my hand on their back and say, "Oh, I'm so sorry. What's going on?" The little invitation of choice that I would tweak would be going over, sitting next to them and saying, "I see how upset you are. Would you like me to put my hand on your back?" Right? You're literally asking for permission to touch them. And for someone who's experienced trauma in their bodies, that sense of being able to say yes or no, rather than just having to tolerate an adult putting, even if it's empathic, even if it's compassionate, you're restoring a sense of you have a choice about what does and doesn't happen to your body, right? And that choice builds trust, okay? And respect. All of this hopefully is helping build a sense of respect for how these children's nervous systems are working, for how your own nervous system is working. But a child can feel if you have a sense of respect for the way they're operating, how they're behaving, or if you don't, right? And even if it's behavior or a presentation that really affects you and triggers you and is not harmonious with the environment, the way you're going to work with that behavior or that pattern of behavior is through a sense of respecting where it's coming from, right? And helping the child understand that and respect it in themselves. Okay. This beautiful river water. Truth number 9, punitive responses are less effective and often harmful. So again, again, I'm going to come back to this. This could actually be a whole training in and of itself. Punitive responses are intended to use pain to teach a lesson, pain or suffering to teach a lesson, right? Data show us that humans actually learn best from pleasure and joy, right? That's why if you teach something through play, it takes maybe 3 to 13 times, versus if you teach something without play, without pleasure and joy, it can take repetitions of between 20 and 60 times for someone to really take in that information, right? So punitive responses using pain or suffering to teach a lesson are different from relational responses, or what we call natural consequences, which use the experience itself and or the relationship to teach the lesson, right? So the difference here might be, you hit me, I'm taking away your video game for 5 hours or whatever, right? So I'm creating a loss, I'm creating a suffering that's actually not really related to the hit, right? So a relational response or a natural consequence is you hit me, showing that child, ow, that hurt. And I'm not going to allow someone to touch my body in that way. So I'm going to create distance for a while, right? And not in a like, punishing way, but just a natural consequence to that behavior, right? These are tweaks. People need a lot of support around this, but generally speaking, punitive responses are not only less effective, but they're harmful because it's really hard to trust someone is intending to cause you pain and suffering, right? It's really hard to build trust and feel safe with that person. And so causing extra pain or misunderstanding onto a situation typically does cause harm. Here's a little beautiful hummingbird. And the final top 10 truth is, and I've been kind of seeding this all along, is that safe and consistent and nurturing relationships are what matter most. It's incredible what human beings can go through when they have a safe, supportive, relational web around them. And it's not saying that we want to allow the systemic injuries to happen or the familial injuries or the developmental injuries to happen, but having safe, consistent, and nurturing relationships are the things that help people recover from trauma. Full stop, period, right? And they are the things that mitigate the degree of trauma experienced. And I actually put this tree because, trees have all of these different relationships with the world, with the sun, with the wind, with the birds, with the squirrels, with the root system and the dirt and the earth, right? It's just such a beautiful example of a web of relationships. So let me jump back here to the top 10 truths. These are really, all of these are something we could have drilled way down into. And these were intended to give you a glimpse at and a snapshot at some really important concepts in your work becoming a trauma-informed teacher. What I want to caution against is that sometimes someone can go through my training or go through a trauma training and think, I've learned what there is to know about trauma and I can competently and successfully practice trauma-informed care, trauma-informed teaching. And this is simply a mistake because there is no practitioner I know who has become trauma-informed after 1 or 2 trainings. This is ongoing work and it's really important to hold it as such and to really understand that it takes really curated, thoughtful training to really develop these tools, this lensing, and these approaches in your work with students. And I actually just want to do a brief visualization and take you on a little journey for a second. You can keep your eyes open. You can close them if it feels good and right to you. But I want you to imagine the experience of walking into a room, seeing a child in full meltdown, and knowing in yourself, feeling rooted in your belly, and knowing that you could help them regulate in a matter of minutes, just with you, right? And I want you to then imagine that child taking a deep breath and looking you in the eye and saying either thank you or giving you a hug or wiping a tear, wiping their nose and then going off to play because they now felt safe, right? There are so many other applications of this work, but I want you to really start visualizing what trauma-informed care can do for you in terms of how it applies to your daily work with kids, right? And as we've gone through these top 10 truths, I want to ask, do you see that when you prioritize safety regulation and building trusting relationships, and you are given clear guidance on how to practice that with your students, your work rapidly improves relationships, experiences, and outcomes, all from your classroom? And there might be some of you that are looking for some support, someone to virtually help you set up your core trauma-informed teaching foundation. And if that feels like a yes to you, I want to invite you to Trauma Camp Basics. This is how people work with me. Trauma Camp Basics is the only training of its kind that shows you exactly how to build safer, trust-filled relationships and more harmonious classroom environments through trauma-informed teaching practices. So again, whether you came because you're trauma-informed curious, or you're that motivated educator who wants to show up with all that they've got, or you're the overwhelmed and frustrated educator who's still committed to showing up and learning how to do things as best as you possibly can, I want you to know that Trauma Camp Basics might be for you. Because I too started knowing absolutely nothing about trauma. I wasn't given some magic healing wand. I wasn't necessarily born with it. I've just learned and developed relational tools that work, period. They work. And if I can do this, so can you. And say hi to my little niece from several years ago when she was just a little nugget. In my Trauma Camp Basics training, I've really curated and crafted this training program so that you can skip the overwhelm, you can skip the confusion. It's really clear and really direct. You can skip the judgment. This isn't about you being good or bad or shaming you for things that you've done wrong. That is not welcome in my trainings at all, right? So we skip the judgment and we also skip the bleakness. I mentioned this in the very beginning, but trauma-informed care is not just about focusing on the traumas people face in their lives. Yes, it requires acknowledging that and bringing that into the room, right? We're bringing that understanding into our work with them. But on the other side of trauma-informed care is healing and growth and liberation. And we carry those in this work together. The 5 modules inside of TCB, Trauma Camp Basics, are 1, getting you started. So this is just literally setting you up with some core foundational concepts. I walk you through the path of progress. We talk about using relationships and harnessing them in this work. So it's really just setting the stage for you to engage in this. Module number 2 is all about the story, right? So getting the story straight on trauma, what it is, what it isn't, what developmental trauma diagnoses there are, complex trauma, the differences between abuse and neglect on the development of the brain. We talk about core experiences of trauma. And so all of this is helping you sharpen what trauma actually is, right? A lot of people use the word trauma without actually knowing what it means, right? So this is getting the story straight. Module number 3 is all about science. And this is a very science-friendly training program, meaning I have made, or maybe let me rephrase that. It's a user-friendly science module, meaning that even if you are not oriented towards science, which I certainly wasn't, I think those were my worst grades in high school and college. But I have broken it down into really bite-sized nuggets that are easy to understand in terms of the brain, right? We've all seen those maps of the brain where there's the amygdala and the hippocampus and there's the cortex, and I don't ever retain anything about that. I don't know about you, but those are so hard for me to retain. And so I have a user-friendly image of the brain that really breaks it down into just 4 simple parts, right? And then we learn things like association and use dependence and sensitization and tolerance, right? And dosing. All of these are really important in terms of understanding and working with neurobiology, okay? Module number 4 is all about self-awareness. Again, we can't do this work without reflecting not only on our own lived experiences, but reflecting upon what comes up when we see a child melting down, or if we see when we experience a child being disrespectful to us, right? What happens to us when we see a child misbehave, right? All of this requires us to increase our self-awareness. And the 5th and final module of Trauma Camp Basics is skills. This is all about developing skills, right? Literal applicable tools that you can use day in and day out. This is where you learn about barriers to engagement. This is where you learn how to de-escalate. This is where you learn what we call the triple R formula. So anytime you're in front of a dysregulated child, you do the first R, the second R, and the third R. I won't tell you what those are, but you can learn in the program about how to proceed, what sequence of events needs to happen for you to be able to work with this child, right? So these are actionable relational tools that you use. And we talk about relational intervention so that you have a core understanding of how this all works. So this, by the way, is a total value of $1,999. When I work with schools and districts, this is the value of the work that I bring. And please don't worry, I'm not expecting teachers to be paying that. So this is a special little offering for teachers. So just stay tuned and we'll get into the teacher-friendly access to Trauma Camp Basics. But if you enroll in Trauma Camp Basics today, and I'm actually gonna add a little button so that you can check out if you wanna start looking at Trauma Camp Basics. There's a little bonus that you'll be getting too, which is called the Acing Aces mini training. And this is applying the adverse childhood experiences study to your life and to your teaching. This is a $397 value. Many of you have already heard of ACEs and many of you haven't. And some of you have heard about ACEs, but not really in depth. And so this is about 2-hour training. That's why I call it a mini training. And it really takes you into it both from a public health lens, but also allowing you to reflect on this personally as well. So this is a really valuable training. For anyone who hasn't heard of ACEs, this is the medical study that put trauma and the connection to negative health, physical, mental, emotional, relational health outcomes later in life. This is the thing that connected them and really put it on the map. So this is kind of standard core language for anyone doing this work. I want you to hear from Karen Marks. She was one of my first TCB students. I have just completed Trauma Camp and Acing Aces, and I cannot express enough how much I enjoyed and valued these courses. I have had students who have faced incredible trauma, and this is practical advice and insight, and the insight has been invaluable. These sessions are so down to earth and easy to listen to. I was disappointed when it came to an end. So this is really designed to illuminate and reinforce the work you're doing. Some of you might wonder, well, what if I get stuck? I need to be able to ask you questions, Julia. And so here's bonus number 2, which is going to be 6 weeks of live Q&As with me and my special guest, Julia Bantimba, who you saw a photo of her earlier, inside a private Facebook community for TCB members only. So you have 2 experts showing up to you with you on a week-to-week basis, answering your questions in real time. And so this is a hugely valuable resource, and also a resource where you are going to get to connect with other educators around the globe who are actively engaging in trauma-informed teaching themselves, right? So this is where you get to make personal connections, share professional resources, apply strategy, learn from each other. It's a beautiful community that starts to unfold. You might also want to know, what if I forget everything before the new school year, right? Like stuff happens. Well, the third bonus is a virtual ticket to Trauma Camp Basics Boot Camp Live 2025. So this is a global virtual event, and this is the first time we're doing it. So this will be a series of sessions with myself and other experts in the field, where we are taking some of the core concepts throughout the Trauma Camp Basics training and really bringing them to life in new and enriched ways. It is going to be a powerful event. Even if you aren't able to make some of the sessions, we'll have them all recorded. And so this will be an asset to you moving forward. And Julia, what about my classroom? How do I know how to set it up to support regulation for my students? Well, remember that little thing that I seeded and spoke about at the beginning, the little special opportunity, well, this is called a fast action bonus. And this means that if you enroll in the course while we are on this webinar, that you will get this bonus absolutely free. And this bonus is called the Fidget Formula. And it's for teachers who want to make their classroom less stressful and more engaging for their students. It is absolutely a rich, probably 60-page document full of neurobiological considerations and applications when you consider the literal tools and toys that you are bringing into your room to support regulation. You see the little fidget spinner at the beginning. That's actually just the symbol of fidget, but we go way beyond that fidget and really understanding how to target certain brain areas, how to target certain sensory systems with specific fidgets, right? And so fidget's a more global umbrella term. And this guide is, I had so much fun creating this, and it's a wildly popular bonus. And so if you enroll while we're on this webinar, before this closes down, you get to have the bonus of the Fidget Formula as well. So here's what you get. You get the full Trauma Camp Basics program, a $1999 value. The bonus number 1, Acing Aces mini training, a $397 value. Bonus number 2, the 6-week private Facebook community and live Q&As, the $1,197 value. Bonus number 3, the ticket, the virtual ticket to TCB Bootcamp Live 2025, which is the global virtual event, $1,497 value, and the extra fast action fidget formula, which is $167 value. So that's a total value of $5,257 in terms of what you would be getting today if you enroll in Trauma Camp Basics. Okay. And you got to know that I know y'all are teachers. I know you come out of your own pockets all the time. And so there's no way in heck that I'm going to invite you to pay that. This is a special teacher promotion. And so what it costs for educators today is $397. And so you can get started today with either 6 installments of $66. I wanted to make it as accessible as possible while honoring the value of the course. So you can do 6 installments of $66 a month, 3 installments of $132 a month, or you can just go ahead and buy it outright and do 1 installment and $397. So if you're ready to get started, head on over. You can click the button that I've made pop up here, or you can head over to traumacamp.com/yes. That's www.traumacamp.com/yes. And here's what's going to happen. You'll see this page, and you can either skim and start to, read more in depth about this program, or you can just click enroll now, and that will bring you right to here, where you will choose the payment installment that works best for you. Once you click on that, you will be taken to a checkout page, and here's where you'll fill out all your information. And at the bottom, you'll see a little, purchase now or enroll now button. And once you do that, once you enroll, you'll be taken to this confirmation page. And this actually, once you get here, I really want you to pause. I really want you to pause and read this and acknowledge, literally like close your eyes and acknowledge what you just did for yourself in terms of investing in your own career, investing in your own students and your classroom, and investing in changing lives from here on out in a different, more robust way, right? That is what trauma-informed care will do for you, what it will do for your school as a whole, and what it will do for the kids and families that you serve, right? This is really important to sit for a second and acknowledge that investment you just made. Once you get there, you can head on over to your email where you'll be receiving an email like this with the login details and kind of everything you need to know about next steps. And then you can log in and see the course. What's really important about this, and I need to pause here, is that for the first time ever, typically I've done as soon as you enroll, you can just start doing the course immediately. And I'm doing it different this time because I'm wanting to foster more of a communal experience and ongoing support module by module. So for the first time ever, we are doing a what's called a dripped training, meaning week by week, you'll be getting a new module sent to you. And we're going to start with the first module on February 17th. That's Monday, February 17th is when we're all going to start the first module together. And so we'll be sending you all the details. You'll get access on that date, and you'll be able to just kind of like sit with one module at a time, engage with one module at a time, and bring your questions to that live Facebook group one module at a time. And so this is where you would log in when we get there, and all of that would be kind of waiting for you there. So again, I want to seed that fast action bonus valued at $167 is the fidget formula. You only get it while you only get it as part of the bonus package while you if you enroll while we're on the webinar. Again, traumacamp.com/yes. And this is also really important. We have a 14-day risk-free guarantee. So if you do the work, right, you're going through the modules with us, you show me that you've done all the work, you show me your results within the 14 days of enrolling, and you're still not satisfied, I will gladly give you a refund. I really want this to be a full yes, and I want this to feel like something that is an asset to your work in the classroom. So again, here's what you're getting. TCB, the complete program. And by the way, that comes with a full workbook, audio, the virtual lessons, bonus number 1, bonus number 2, bonus number 3, the fidget formula, which is that fast action bonus, all valued at $5,257. Just so you know, by the way, I'm repeating this because people need to hear this oftentimes several times for it to get in there. So that's why I'm repeating it. And I want to dive in a little bit more to what you'll find inside the course. Okay. So again, you've heard me say about a few of these things before, but we're going to look at the core experiences of trauma, neurodevelopment made easy, i.e. what I call the brain balloon, concepts like dosing, association, use dependence, sensitization, and tolerance. The 5 Fs, some of us know fight and flight, some of us know freeze, but there are a few others, and we want to talk about how they each work together. Windows of tolerance, identifying that inside yourself, identifying that inside of your students. Relational interventions 101, barriers to engagement. If any of you have students who, no matter how nice you are, no matter how kind you try to be, no matter how many offerings for connection you make, there is just a wall up and you can't get through. This is really a valuable lesson for you in the course. De-escalation strategies, like imagine if you knew without a shadow of a doubt that just with your person, just with who you are, you knew how to help someone regulate, right? This applies to children for sure, but it also applies to adults, right? So this is really a powerful teaching inside the course. The triple R formula, and a special recording of the Help Me Help You engagement strategy. So this is a workshop I do that is about a specific relationship intervention, relational intervention. And this is a consolidated recording of this. So this is a really beautiful, valuable thing you get to see, because you also get to see me working with other educators in real time. So again, you can get started today, 6 installments of $66, 3 installments of $132, or 1 installment of $397. You can go ahead to traumacamp.com/yes. And I want to ask you a few questions. If all this program did was give you the courage to intervene with a really challenging student in a way that built trust rather than compromised it, wouldn't that be worth it? If all this program did was help you confidently de-escalate a stressful and escalating situation, wouldn't that be worth it? If all this program did was allow you to empower your students to regulate and co-regulate with you and their peers, wouldn't that be worth it? And if all this program did was allow you to better understand your own lived experiences and your own reactions to stressors, wouldn't that be worth it to you? This course does all of this and more. And I want you to hear from some of our Trauma Camp Basics students. So Tammy Barney, first grade teacher, she had difficulty tolerating a severely traumatized student who could not regulate in her presence and was violent towards her. And this included kicking, punching, pulling hair, scratching, headbutting, screaming profanities. Then she enrolled in Trauma Camp Basics. And the result? No more violent outbursts, no more aggression from that student. And now that student even shows appreciation and affection towards her. So this is one of the most beautiful before and after learning and utilizing these tools examples that I think a lot of teachers begin to see as they enroll in Trauma Camp Basics. She says, this training has changed the way I teach and given me proactive tools that help me feel more graceful and loving in my work with even the most challenging students. Here's Damika Sanders, and she's an administrator who brought me on to train her constituency of educators. She said her teachers were lost, confused, overwhelmed, and needed strategies on ways to help their struggling students. Then they took the Trauma Camp Basics training, she did too, and the result was instant relief that her teachers were now equipped with practical and approachable ways to work with students struggling with mental health needs. She said, as a parent of a child who struggles with anxiety, I even felt more equipped with tools to help him at home. I'd recommend Julia in this program right away. Here's Erin. She's an educator, and she actually she was somewhat familiar with the mental health struggles of her students. It wasn't completely new to her, but she'd gotten somewhat complacent and was resting on her laurels and wanted to up her teaching game. So she enrolled in Trauma Camp Basics. And the result was she's now thinking outside the box and reflecting in a different way about what she is bringing to her student interaction. So this is active reflection and practice, and that in and of itself really changes the flow of a relationship. Erin says she's not just disseminating another theory. She's talking about how to practice this stuff in real time. I felt like I could trust her because of that. And I want you to hear from Jeff Johnson, a director of public instruction at a district I trained in Mountain Home, Idaho. He said he and his team were at their wits' end with one student's bad behavior. This is just a case example. They were ready to expel him and send him to another school. Then they enrolled in the Trauma Camp Basics training. The result? Our staff wanted to keep that student around. And that student doesn't have those issues anymore. They started talking to the student instead of reacting to his issues, and the kid was completely responsive to that. He said, this training changed my lens completely. It is an absolute no-brainer for any school or district. And so again, if you want to get started today, head on over to traumacamp.com/yes and select your installment plan, the best one that works for you. I really tried to use these installment plans to meet you respectively where you're at. And so choose the one that fits best for you. And then everything's already set up for you, right? There's the lessons, the workbook, and audio with every lesson. There's week by week course delivery. You will have lifetime access to this course, and you'll be gifted with every new version of this course that I create, right? Trauma Camp Basics is going to be evolving over time. And so every new version I create will be updated in your program. And so some of you might have some doubts, right? I want to become a trauma-informed teacher, but what if I don't have a lot of time to watch long videos? Is this a course of long lectures? Absolutely not. So my course is really designed to have short and bingeable lessons. If you can see down at the bottom of this barriers to engagement training, this training is 13 minutes and 33 seconds. So the majority of my trainings range from 7 minutes all the way up to 15 minutes. So somewhere in that range, meaning you can watch one on your break, you can listen to one as you're commuting home from your work day, you can watch one if you get in early from class, whatever it is, this is here to be, it's designed to be short and bingeable. And that is to be respectful to the cadence of your life. And my personal philosophy is it's the best way people learn is short, bite-sized doses of instruction. What if I can't keep up with the week-to-week course content? Will I fall behind? Well, the good news about the Trauma Camp Basics program, and here you'll see in the Trauma Camp Basics library, is it's there when you need it, right? You absolutely can do the week-by-week training with us. And if you can't, it will be there. It will be there 1 year from now. It'll be there 10 years from now. It'll be there 2 weeks from now. So whenever it is that you feel like, yes, I can sit down and take in another lesson, it's there. Question, is this going to overwhelm me? Is there any organized way to get through this? 100%. So what I have with each different module and each different stage is at the beginning, you get a set of worksheets that are the companion to that particular module. And as you can see, each has a front page where you can check off all the lessons, you can follow along, you can track your progress and see where you're going, and you can moderate how much time to give and how much time you can apply to that week for your learning. I'm seeing some commentary on the side. Just so you know, the masterclass ended with the top 10 truths. And so all of you are, so if you're here, you're staying because you have some questions at the end and or you're interested in Trauma Camp Basics. So here again is what you'd be getting. Trauma Camp Basics program. Again, that's video lessons, audio, and workbook. Bonus number 1, Acing Aces mini training. Bonus number 2, the 6-week private Facebook community and live Q&As. Bonus number 3, a ticket to TCB Bootcamp Live 2025. And the fast action bonus, which is the fidget formula. So here's that fidget formula. Again, enroll if you want to get that as part of your bonus collection. Get started today, traumacamp.com/yes. You can click the button on the screen. And now we have come to the final Q&A. And here's what I want to say. I am going to go through and see the questions so I can start responding to them. So if you have any of the questions, feel free to start adding those in the chat. But I really want to take a minute to speak to some of the testimonials from some people I really respect who are, in turn showing respect and faith in my program too. So if any of you know Girl Rising, the documentary Girl Rising, Holly Gordon, a colleague of mine, said, invaluable, intentional, impactful. Trauma Camp is an exciting innovation at just the right time. Mark Sfursky of Facing History, Facing Ourselves, which is a worldwide program, said, I believe this is essential education for every teacher. So these are folks in the field who are sending these little votes of confidence in this work, and who, there's crossover between our work. So feels really valuable. Thank you so much. Okay, now I'm looking at all of this. Thank you so much. This has given me so much to think about and research on how to better myself so that I can help my students. Teresa, sounds great. Okay. Okay, great information. Thank you. Very informative. Okay. Okay, so Michelle said, wish I could enroll now, but in order to count our PD hours in my district, we have to submit a PD proposal that has to be voted on. Okay, absolutely. So first of all, I just want to respond to that. This teacher promotional opportunity will run through the 13th at 3:30 p.m. Pacific time. So I don't know if your PD proposal requires longer than that many days. That might be too quick of a turnaround. But if you want to then enroll later, it'll be at a different it won't be at this promotional price. Or if you want to invite your school or district as a whole to enroll in Trauma Camp Basics, simply reach out to me at info@traumacamp.com. I'm just putting this in the chat. And there you'll be able to contact me with any questions about professional development then. Okay. Thanks for all the information. I'm in the same situation. Thank you. Okay. This is obviously longer than an hour. Yes, the masterclass we did hit right at an hour. So thank you all for joining me for that. De-escalation strategies geared for preschoolers, 100%. Yes. Have any of you ever known an escalated preschooler who's throwing something across the room or who's becoming violent with another preschooler, right? Preschoolers have some of the least developed brains. And when they get escalated, it's all out, right? And so what you learn in the Trauma Camp Basics program is that de-escalation is simply responding to an activated nervous system, and it's helping you bring that back down, right? And that applies to, 2 and 3-year-olds and all the way up to 50-year-olds, right? So de-escalation, we hear it a lot when we're talking about public safety or the use of force with police. And we hear it in more a adult context, but de-escalation gets to happen when you're working with little kids. And in fact, it's really important to know how to bring someone down, bring their thermometer down back to a different temperature. Becky, I'm a teaching, okay, yes. Oh, yeah, the realities of, teacher and aide pay is real, and so I'm keeping that in mind. And if this works for you, it works, and if it doesn't, it doesn't. And I hope that the Top 10 Truths Masterclass in and of itself felt like really productive and useful material. We don't have an opportunity to apply for assistance to take it at this time. That might come it could come through the installment package, but it might come from your school as a way to support that. Learn lots today. Thank you. This presentation was awesome. Thank you so much. I wrote a bunch of notes. Thank you so much. Okay, Lisa, how long do we need to watch to receive a certificate? This was very informative. So everyone who stayed through the masterclass will receive that certificate of attendance. Thank you. I'm aware now that I wasn't very clear about that, so I want to clarify. Okay. Yeah, okay. Got it. Yes, got it. Thank you. Information. Got it. Thank you so much. Thank you, Julia. Thank you, Tori. This can be used. Tori wants to know, is this an app or can you use it on a computer? This is really nice. So Tori, you can use this on your phone. You can log in on your laptop or computer. So those are the 2 login accessibility points. Yay, Trish, you registered from Canada, and I'm so glad that you'll be joining us and that you'll be in the group and walking along this path with us. Thank you so much. I haven't received the slides for today. It is an attractive package. Thank you. The slides aren't going to be sent out. That is kind of my proprietary stuff, but I will be sending out a replay of this material shortly after we complete and conclude the webinar. And okay, can we get a copy of the slides? I'm not going to be sharing the slides, but I will be sharing the replay, and that will be available for a limited period of time. Donna, thank you so much. Already signed up for the class. Yay, I'm so glad you enrolled. I cannot wait to see you inside. I feel like more training would have been nice and less of long-winded commercial that this became. Oh, I'm so sorry, Helen. I wish it had been clearer to you that you could have left after the masterclass. That was really the hour-long commitment we made to get through that masterclass. And as I said in the beginning, this is really for those who want the opportunity to learn more about how to work with me. So so it is a commercial. Thank you. Sefi, you shared examples how ADHD can be mistaken as a diagnosis. How can I, as a teacher, see it, identify it, alert the parents? So Sefi, I want to ask you, are you asking how can I see whether it is ADHD or trauma, or whether I can notify the parents about concerning behavior that I'm seeing. I'm not actually sure what your question is, because actually, let me just respond to the question in the way I think you're asking it, which is, if I'm seeing these symptoms, right? I'm seeing the hyperactivity, I'm seeing the inattentiveness, the distractibility. How do I identify it and alert the parents? I actually would just present the behaviors to the parents, right? So one of the things, and this, I'm going to do role play for a second, bringing the parents in. One of the things I've noticed about little, Joseph is that he tends to move a lot in class. He seems really distractible, and like his focus starts to ping off of several different areas in class. So it's really hard for him to learn. And what that tells me is that his brain is working in a different way, right? And so what I want to know is how to work with you and how to work with him in the classroom in a way that best supports his brain, right? And so what you're saying in that intervention with the parents is, you're saying, I don't know what this is. I don't know if this is childhood trauma. I don't know if this is autism spectrum, but these are the symptoms that I'm seeing. And I'd like you to work with me in helping to figure it out, right? Hashana, thank you. This was very informative. Sylvia, would love to enroll now. Oh, yes. I'm so sorry that you lost your job. There's a lot going on in this educational field right now. It is legit. I understand it. Thank you so much for being here. We'll consider later. How do you say you speculate a child is exhibiting ADHD behaviors without alarming the parent? So Melanie is asking, how do you speculate that a child is exhibiting ADHD behaviors without alarming the parent? So again, this is tacking on to what the response I gave just a second ago, but basically you are saying, this is what I'm noticing. These are the behaviors that are presenting in classroom. And you're really wanting to use a kind of objective and neutral approach to it, right? They're not like he's instigating things, he's being disrespectful. You're really just naming the behaviors. He's rocking a lot in his seat. He tends to interrupt a lot when we're having class discussions. He gets out of his seat a lot. He tends to tap and fidget a lot. So you're literally just presenting the objective symptoms to them. And then you're informing them that this is indicating to me that his brain is working in a unique way. And what I don't know, I don't know what that is. I don't know if that means that he fell somewhere on the ADHD spectrum. I don't know if there is a dietary thing going on. I don't know if there is stress that's causing this in his life. But I want to open up a discussion with you as the parents so that we can navigate this together and make sure that he is getting the best support in terms of his education as possible. So that's how I would language it. Julia, great. Yes. Oh, I love this. Yeah. High stakes testing is increasing my burnout. Will this address teacher burnout? This does not specifically address teacher burnout. That's actually a workshop that I am going to be developing hopefully soon, as the incidence of educator burnout has just hit such a high threshold over the last several years. And I mean, it was already at a high threshold anyway, but especially over the last several years. So that's in development. That's not specifically part of this training. Melanie, some parents may feel discouraged or worried. Yeah, so what's really important to know when you're working with parents around anything that might concern their child and concern them about their child is, you are not responsible for how they feel about their child. You're only responsible for how you communicate your own concerns about their child, right? And so if you are steeping this if you are speaking to this from a sense of earnest concern and care, respect for that child and for those parents, and curiosity about what picture we're seeing here and what puzzle we're trying to put together here. if you come from that place, you can have just about any conversation with parents. It's really important. One of the things I've learned in my own professional and clinical training is that it's really important to be honest and direct. And the way you are honest and direct is really important, right? So this is not about tiptoeing around certain things. It's about getting grounded in that curiosity and that respect and that care as you communicate your concerns. Linda, thank you for sharing this, Sefe, which I hope I'm pronouncing your name right, Sefi. Thank you. You really made me feel validated and supported. I'm so, so glad to hear that. Hashana, I'm unable to join, however, would like information to give to our curriculum director. Maybe it could be something of a PD for all teachers. Not sure, just a thought. Here's my email. Again, thank you. Have a good day, Hashana. I will be sure to reach out to you. I love working with school groups and entire staff bodies because when you have buy-in from the whole staff, this is where you experience a full cultural change, right? This is where the entire system of the school starts to change and you start hitting trauma-informed care at every level. And so what a richness. I will reach out to you to have that discussion. Kate Wise, Sharon, thank you. Kate Wise, thank you for all the great information. I cannot wait to share with my CCs. Trish, so excited. Rachel, my internet keeps kicking out. I'm sorry. I hope you got what you could, and I will be sending that replay. So whenever you get back on a good connection, it'll be there. Kelly, thank you. I've taken many trauma-informed courses and learned some things today to try. Thank you. Will the certificate be sent to our email? Yes, it will. So I'll be sending that certificate to you in probably about an hour and a half. So that'll be coming to your email, and it will, the subject line will be, here's your certificate of attendance, ! So that's what will be coming to your folder. Please make sure to check your junk email because it might land there. I get a lot of, I can see if something was delivered on my back end, and I get a lot of outreach saying like, hey, where's the certificate? And it turns out it was actually delivered into their junk email folder. So just make sure to check that. And also you can add me as a safe sender, info@traumacamp.com, so that you can bypass the junk mail folder. Michelle Jordan, thank you so much. So informative. Sefi, thank you for the answer. Very helpful. Rebecca, I enjoy your concise delivery and your beautiful energy. Thank you. I've signed up and will be sharing the opportunity to learn from you with others. Thank you so much, Rebecca. I cannot wait to see you in the Facebook group and start this journey with you. And also for anyone who has colleagues that might be interested in this, please have them join us for the final masterclass, which is going to be on Wednesday, the 12th, February 12th. And it's at 3:30 p.m. Pacific time. If you are tuning in from out of the country, then there are time converters that you can use online to determine what that is. But the same place you registered for this, you can pass along traumacamp.com/masterclass to any colleagues who might want to join this masterclass again. Sandy, thank you so much for all the information. I will be sharing with leadership at my school. We need trauma training for all our staff. That's so great. Yes. And it's staff-wide trainings are, in my opinion, the best. So I love it. Leanne, very helpful. Thanks so much. Holly, thank you so much for taking the time to do this training. It was informative, and I am reflecting a lot, both in my teaching and personally. Sandy, cannot sign up right now. Have a great day. Thanks for all you do. I'm so glad you could be here and join us. Stacy, can I get information to give my school administrator to see about possible PD for all the teachers at my district? Yes, Stacy, I will reach out to you right after with some information. Absolutely. Jenny Holcomb, thank you for sharing your information. I hope to be able to attend your boot camp at some point down the road. I will need to look into school funding options or grants. Absolutely. It's good work that we're doing, and it's going to be here. So if it doesn't work for you now, we'll be here. And I want the timing to feel right all across the board. Patricia, thank you for the information. I look forward to receiving my certificate and attending your camp. Thank you. Tori, my school is a separate school setting and we experience high-level aggressive behaviors daily, but building relationships is the key to helping our kiddos. I am excited to learn more. Tori, this is so beautiful. It's oftentimes in the highest acuity populations that these interventions show the starkest difference. Like it is, yeah, you'll learn in the training where aggression comes from. And it is really eye-opening to start to learn to see that and work with it from a different place. Julia Mitchell, will that information about your new sessions be sent to individuals who have attended any of your previous trainings? Julia, can you, I'm not sure I understand that. Will that information about your new sessions, are you talking about new master classes? Like new, oh, you mean like the burnout master class? Yes. So if you are here, you are now part of my email list. So anytime that I develop new workshops, you will get that announcement and you will get that invitation to sign up and join us. So yes, you will get those. Erica, thank you for the informative information. Hopefully I'm able to join sometime in the future. Thank you. Davida, I am from NZ, so would it be possible to reach out to me later? Yes, absolutely. Davida, are you talking about reaching out for your school? If you are, yes, I'm happy to do that. Thank you for conducting this training and taking the time to share this great information. Teresa, okay, thank you. Davida, I can request my school to have this program as a PD. Awesome. Yes, I would love that. This would be a really rich PD. And also please invite your school to, again, attend that final masterclass, just like we did here today on the 12th. Because, you know, as I know getting approved for professional development funding can be a longer process. But again, this 1 hour dose of this masterclass is free. It's a free online training that anyone can attend. So please invite them to join us for that final masterclass next week. Lydia, thank you. Very informative. Melanie, I have to sign off, but thank you for doing a beautiful presentation. I look forward to presenting the certificate to my program director as well as my extensive notes taken during the masterclass. I'm so happy. And I'm also so happy to hear that notes were taken. That's how I know that someone's really engaging with the material. So I'm so glad that workbook was put to good use. Pip, thank you for this presentation. Davida, thank you. I'm from NC2, Pip, which part? I'm from Auckland. Okay, so there's some connections happening. I love it. Are there any more questions? Yes, it is okay to sign off. It's okay to sign off. You're getting the certificate. I love it. You are not here against your will, I promise. Thank you all so much for joining me. And yeah, I can't wait to see some of you inside of Trauma Camp Basics and the group. And yeah, we'll continue on this journey together. You'll be hearing from me. And yay, Wendy signed up. Yay, copious amounts of notes, Holly. I love it. Beautiful. Thank you for spending your Saturday with me. If you have any more questions, feel free to reach out. Oh my gosh, Tara, I saw you were from Ireland in the beginning, and I wanted to say, so just a little side note, I lived in Dublin. I studied abroad there and then lived in Dublin for a year and was a Chicago Rose in 2010. So I'm like, all my Irish women are all my Irish people. What's up? So anyway, I love seeing my people here. Davida, how long is this offer going to last? Oh, County Mayo. I love it. Davida, this offer is going to be available until next Thursday, February 13th at 3:30 p.m. Pacific time. That's next Thursday, February 13th in the United States at 3:30 p.m. Pacific time. And that's when the doors on this particular promotional offer will close. and you have until then to enroll in Trauma Camp Basics. If that deadline passes before you're able to enroll, you can reach out to me at info@traumacamp.com, and it's not going to be the same promotion. It won't have the same bonuses necessarily. But what I do when I work with schools and districts outside of these teacher-specific promotions is we put together a package that serves the needs of the school or district. So that's what we can do when the time comes. Thank you all so much. Thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for engaging with me, engaging in this work, for investing this time in yourselves and in our work together. If you have any questions, info@traumacamp.com. Wendy has a question. Are there ways to figure out if a student has trauma versus ADHD? So usually that's going to be something, yes, there are ways to do that. First of all, an ADHD assessment is something that's usually provided by a psychologist, a clinical psychologist. At least that's what they're called here in the United States. So that is a formal assessment that a child will go through to get a clinical diagnosis from a pediatric psychologist of whether or not they have ADHD. This is really important because, yes, someone may be showing symptomology of ADHD, but it doesn't necessarily mean we can just throw around like, oh, that kid's definitely ADHD, right? This is more of an ongoing conversation that a child's parents or caregivers needs to have with the teacher, with their doctor, with their pediatrician, with their, if they have a child psychologist or psychiatrist. So, and it's also really important to remember that people have varying ideas and feelings about diagnoses, right? Some people are really helped by having a diagnosis that they can hold on to. Some people feel really stigmatized by having certain diagnoses. So as you are considering a conversation with a parent about their child's behavior and whether or not it falls into a category of a certain diagnosis, that is something that's really important to navigate really thoughtfully and with a lot of space and curiosity as to how they feel about diagnoses. Because that can take the conversation in a variety of ways, right? If you say, to a parent who feels really stigmatized already in their life and doesn't believe in the mental health system and doesn't believe in diagnoses, and you say, I think your kid has ADHD, first of all, and this is where the professional humility comes, we are not, I can give a diagnosis. I do give diagnoses, but usually in order to affirm that diagnosis, I actually send a child out to a psychologist for an assessment, right? I have that conversation with the parents and I say, these are the symptoms I'm seeing. These are the kind of traits or behaviors I'm seeing. What I'd like you to do is get your child further assessed so that we can collaborate to identify the best route forward. So I, even as someone who's trained in this, often refer out before, settling into a diagnosis. And so as educators, that's where the professional humility is really important, is that you're not mental health professionals who can give diagnoses. And so this is something, again, you are presenting the behaviors that you're seeing, you're presenting the symptoms, and then you are saying, I think it is worthwhile to explore what these mean about how your child's brain works, right? So that we can create a system and collaborate to make sure that I am working with your child in the best way possible. You see how that language, that framing really, it rests this conversation in the arms of, I'm caring about your child, right? I'm caring about serving you and your kid best. So let's collaborate and find more information about how we can do that, right? Wendy, thanks. Julia, are PD certificates provided? So for this masterclass, you'll get a certificate of attendance. But for those of you who enroll in the Trauma Camp Basics program, you will get a certificate of completion. We can see on the back end of Trauma Camp Basics who has completed the training. And so once you've completed the training, you will be sent a certificate of completion. And the Trauma Camp Basics training is over 8 hours of instruction. And the Acing ACEs mini training is over 2 hours, right? And so you have a lot of hours you're collecting in terms of doing this work. So in that way, it is a really rich offering as well. Wendy, thank you so much for your thoughtful answer. I really appreciate it and can't wait to start that class. Woo! Monday the 17th. Hi, Abir from Melbourne. Hi, Abir. Is this PD recorded? So this masterclass is being recorded, and what's going to happen after we close down this webinar is that I will download that. That will take a little time, and then I'll have to upload it into a particular email, and then I'll send you that email, and you will have access to this webinar replay for a little less than a week. So when this promotional offer closes next Thursday, the 13th, the limited time masterclass replay will also come down. So if you want to watch that replay, you have to do so within the next before next Thursday. E asks, is the camp self-paced or on a deadline to have completed? It is both. Oh, Abir said thank you. You're welcome. So the camp is, okay, so first of all, the way this works is that on February 17th, so not this coming Monday, but the Monday after, everyone who has enrolled will get access to the very first module. So you'll have access to that module and you'll be able to take in those lessons at whatever pace you want. You can do it the day you get them. You can do it a couple days later. You can not do it that week, right? You get to decide, but you will have access to the first module that first week. The second week, you'll get the second module. And again, you'll be able to self-pace, right? And then the third, fourth, fifth weeks, you'll get the third, fourth, and fifth modules. Once we've unlocked all of the modules, you'll have the entire thing and you can access it whenever, however you want, right? And so it's available to you in that way at a self-paced time. But for the first 5 weeks, it's called dripping out. We're dripping out the learning content. And that is, that's so we can pace it together. So that's what's happening. And are there any more questions? Did I answer all your questions? Did I answer them adequately? Any final takers? Okay, this is your last chance to enroll. If you're on the fence, go ahead and do it now. It's traumacamp.com/yes. Thank you all so much for joining me. It's been a pleasure. It's been an honor. And yeah, I will see some of you inside and I'll see some of you next time. All right, here we go. I'm closing down. 5, 4,